Diego Pavia and this Vandy offense will go as far as this rebuilt offensive line will take them.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Snow Day Round 2. Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode, we react to what just went down at Rupp. It was a competitive game for a minute, and then, well, predictably, the wheels fell off. So we'll talk about that. As spring football draws near, Vandy has stepped up the offensive line recruiting. Also, do they need to go to the portal in the spring window to get another guy? Well, it will depend on how spring practice goes, and it seems that Diego Pavia and this Vandy offense will go as far as the offensive line will take them. And what does that statement mean? So what that statement means is this. Last year, look at the arc of the season, right? And look at kind of how, and if you look at your offensive line play, and you look at your offensive line play and that only, and you have the luxury of doing that because it is very reflective. Sometimes it's not always reflective. This time it is. But if you look at the arc of how the offensive line was playing, game in and game out, you can kind of see the season kind of going like this and then nosediving and then coming back up for air in the bowl game. The offensive line played beautifully in the bowl game, by the way. But like start of the season, they came out mashing against Virginia Tech. Obviously, Alcorn State not much of a threat there, but they also against Georgia State, it was a total WTF moment for the entire program. And then they had that uptick where they went. I think it was 5-1 over their middle six. I mean, it was insane. And then they dropped the final three, and it just kind of fell apart. And so a lot of that was the offensive line was experiencing some injuries. They were, they weren't as deep, as they needed to be, and they didn't have the quality, that when somebody got banged up or like if somebody was just not playing well, they couldn't just throw another body in there like say a Georgia could or an Alabama could or an Ohio State could or whoever. They just didn't have the same quality depth. And so, that drop off was major. And it's a lot of guys, and it's not a talent thing necessarily. It's really like offensive line is probably one of the hardest positions to judge. And, a lot of teams get it wrong. Not just Vandy, but a lot of teams get it wrong. And it's impossible to project, okay, this guy's 6'7", 300 pounds. He has pretty good feet and he just doesn't pan out. And then, you have another guy who's like 6'4", 290, one sport athlete, super intelligent. He ends up being an NFL guy or, it just kind of works out that way where it's, you just don't know. And conventional wisdom kind of goes out the window there. So, when you look at this offense, you look at the offensive line play, and you look at what Diego Pavia and this offense was able to do based on that. Like early in the season, they had a lot of run lanes for Alexander, for Pavia, for those guys. They were able, to protect a little bit so they could push the ball downfield. And teams, a lot of it was teams weren't ready for it, and Vandy took advantage of that. And then as teams kind of figured it out, it just kind of seemed like Vandy went from like 2 steps ahead to like 2 steps behind. As the season went on, because teams started kind of figuring it out. They started reshuffling things, and Vandy just had a hard time adjusting. And some of it was just these guys weren't good enough to adjust. Even if they did, they just weren't going to win those matchups. And some of it was other teams just, were able to beat our schemes. And whichever way you look at it, I think that's something that Clark Lee took into the offseason and was like, okay, some things have got to change here. And, Coach Klenakis is great at drilling down fundamentals. And I think fundamentally this team did get better. Attitude-wise, they did get better. I did like the strong and quick side at times, but sometimes in pass pro, it's not always good. Like if your strong side ends up being the blind side, and that guy's not as quick and pass pro as your quick tackle. So, you can get in trouble there a little bit when you're flip-flopping. I also think sometimes those guys got a little confused at times. You're probably not going to have that as much this coming season because they're already in it. You've got some new guys that are going to have to get used to it, but for the most part, everyone's kind of already in it. So I'm excited about the offensive line play this year. I think this offense is going to be able to do a lot of things. I think Pavia is going to really be able to expand his game because I think this offensive line is going to expand this game. And I think the portal additions, especially Jordan White, I think Jordan White's a bona fide NFL center. He comes in. I think he's got 1 year left. So got to make the most of it. Isaiah Glass coming in, same situation, going to come in, probably going to take that quick tackle spot. These guys will be the standout guys. And I think Sterling Porsche, when he comes in from he enrolls in June, but when he comes in, I think I think he's from Texas Tech, if I remember. When he enrolls, I think he's going to be good as well. So these portal guys are going to come in and make an immediate impact, just talent wise. It'll be a matter of Porsche can get up to speed scheme wise, which I hope he's got all the materials he needs to kind of study up. But this group is, I think the one thing is they added depth in this room. And I think I think they've got more quality depth in this offensive line room than they had last year. I think they've got 2 full units that they could kind of roll out there and feel pretty good about it. But we'll talk later about whether or not, and when I say later, probably after spring practice, whether when that spring portal opens, I think it probably would benefit you to go get somebody, but we'll kind of take that as it comes. But here's the projected lineup. Okay, here's the projected starters. Okay, Isaiah Glass, Kevo Wesley are the quick side guys. Okay, Kevo Wesley got some playing time last year as a quick guard. Was pretty good. I think overall this team had a lot of success running the ball, so you can credit your guards and things like that for a team being successful. I don't think anyone stood out good or bad last year. I think the best move they made was switching Losoya and Castillo. Castillo going to center, Losoya going to guard. I think making that switch was really good. Jordan White, your NFL guy, your center comes in. He's going to be an absolute beast. Transfers in from Liberty. Chase Mitchell is going to bump down to strong guard. I think that's going to be a good move for him. Just imagine him collapsing down on a 1 technique, comboing a 3 technique up to a linebacker. He's athletic enough to block at the second level, yet he is big enough to really hammer some down blocks and really hammer some double team and double team combos and things like that. Mizell Sandoval, I think, is going to be the wild card in this whole thing. And he's going to be, if he can truly develop, which I think he's still very raw. I think there's still some work left to be done. But I think if he can have a really good spring, you could look at him as being your starting strong tackle. That dude's an absolute house, right? It's going to be determined by what his feet are like in pass pro, and if he can kind of consistently enough create run lanes on that strong side, because part of that is when you run power or counter or any sort of gap scheme, your strong tackle, if you're flipping sides, which if you're not flipping sides, you're right tackle. Because most teams are right-handed, but if you're flipping sides, that play side tackle better be able to hammer down on a down block. Especially if teams are going to go those tight fronts, and you want to and you get into a situation where you're starting to block down on a 4-eye, which is inside eye of the tackle. You better be able to drive that guy into next week. Right. And Mizell Sandoval has every bit of ability to do so. So this starting 5, this starting unit's going to be really, really good. And I think, possibly they could go and get a starter. Porsche could come in and be that starter when he comes in June. But right now, Sandoval has the right of first. That didn't really apply here, but he has first crack at it. Essentially, he's going to have the first opportunity to kind of play that strong tackle, and we're gonna get a pretty good idea after spring. Can he or can he not do it? And so we'll get that answered, and they'll figure out. Okay, well, this guy's a long way away. We need to go get a portal guy start Porsche, get another portal guy, or go get a starter, pay big dollar for a starter. And that'll do it too as well. So, but what I'm really excited about is also the depth. I think there's a lot of quality depth here, a lot of guys pushing for playing time, which I think will also help the quality. Like I think last year you just didn't really have enough, right? You didn't really have enough guys to kind of push, and those starters, I don't know that they got a lot of great work, but you have David Siegel, Josh Raymond as your backups on the quick side. Cade McConnell is your backup center. He played a little bit of tackle last year. I think naturally he's going to be a senior. Gunnar Givens and Charlie Clark as your strong side guys. I think those are going to be the guys that push the starters, especially Charlie Clark, Mizell Sandoval, and I think Sterling Porsche as well is going to come in and really kind of put in some work there and compete. So I think you're going to see a lot of good things. Grayson Morgan, Gage Pitchford, I think they could factor into this if they're healthy. Unfortunately, they I think one or both could be heading for a medical DQ. I think the injuries are just kind of piled up, and some of the injuries just aren't good. Back injuries, chronic knee injuries, things like that those things just don't heal, man. And, I feel bad for those guys, but like, it's just, it is what it is. And, health comes first. And if they can play, I think they could be really good players. Like I think Pitchford could be that strong guard, but he's got to prove that he's healthy. And that's the number one thing for him. So it's going to be a really good group. I think it's going to be a really, really competitive group. And I think honestly in recruiting, Sandoval, before I get to recruiting, but Sandoval has a really good shot at being the breakout guy, right? He's going to be the breakout guy. Givens, I think, is going to have a chance to break out as well. I think he's going to compete and he's going to make it difficult. And then I think, again, these portal guys are going to make this offensive line go a little bit next level, and this offense is going to truly benefit from that. But they're kicking tail in recruiting as well. 2026, they're in it for a lot of marquee names, for a lot of really good, really talented names. They just got to kind of close and hope that they can, do some things. But we'll talk about recruiting next. Before we do that, though, attention, Locked On Vandy fans. The future of college sports is here and is transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes that they love. Now, with Roy, you get to be a part of the change and support Vandy athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes that you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans control. No more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Vandy athletes the way that they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting all of your favorite players. All right, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. Thank you to the everydayers. Thank you for everyone that has subscribed and make all this happen. I truly, this show wouldn't be what it is without you guys. So keep it up and just let's add to it, man. Let's get there. So, offensive line recruiting, right? Well, if you need a second listen, Locked On SEC is great. Locked On Ole Miss. I'm going to guest host on Locked On Ole Miss pretty soon. My man, Stephen Willis, is going to have surgery in April, so I'm going to guest host one of his shows, and that's going to be a lot of fun because I don't know what the heck I'm going to say about Ole Miss, but I might just talk about Eli Manning for 30 minutes and call it a day. Who knows? Any Ole Miss fans out there that are listening, coming over from his show, I might actually do the show as Steve. Steve and I are really good friends, so I think I'm probably one of the only ones that could probably do that, and him think it's funny. So anyway, that could also be an opportunity as well. But anyway, offensive line recruiting. This is going to be a lot of fun. Okay, this is I think Vandy recruiting just in general is really taking an uptick. And I think some of that is due to success. I think recruits see NIL potential in Nashville, which is outstanding. And you have an opportunity here to capitalize on that. Now you just have to. You have to capitalize on it, or when it's gone, if you get behind in all of that, you're cooked, man. You are absolutely cooked. So recruiting at the offensive line position is also crucial, and you have to get some good guys. You have to almost be spot on with your evaluations, which that's a tough thing to do at the offensive line position. But if you can nail some of your evaluations on that, you can really, really make a push. And I think Luke Collins is a name that is one that's on the tip of everybody's tongue. He's from Columbus, Ohio. He is heavy with in-state school Cincinnati. But Vandy's making a push there. He's 6'4", 270 pounds. He's an interior guy. But they're in on him. And Vandy's really making a push. And for Vandy to get in on Ohio guys, and to get in on some of these stars, I think is a testament to just kind of how they're operating. Harding Harper and the recruiting staff are doing a phenomenal job of helping identify these guys and really just kind of staying on them. Jarvis Strickland is somebody. He's from Tillman. He is he's somebody that a lot of people are high on. He's Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee. He's really in the class of 2026. He's somebody that is that's somebody to watch, and I'm excited about that. And anytime you can get a marquee guy, that's going to be good. He's coming from Kentucky. And Crystal Ball is currently in favor of Vanderbilt, and this guy would be outstanding. He's a top 247 offensive tackle. That's something that Vandy needs. This guy is extremely athletic, great feet, long, got some, everything you want in a tackle. Kentucky, Louisville, and Michigan are the other three. You beat out Michigan for any offensive lineman. Consider yourself lucky. Then Cody Taylor is somebody that he's got a connection to Nashville. He's another interior guy, and he really liked his visit. He's from Arkansas, and he is somebody that really, I think, would fit in well with this system. I think Memphis is probably going to be the school to beat here, which people are like, oh, we're beating Memphis out for recruits, but Memphis is not a slouch program, so. Who knows? What can you do there? But, just the fact that, like, you're talking about these guys, and, it used to be for offensive linemen especially, and it just kind of for a period of time, just recruiting was like, we got to go beat out Central Michigan for a guy, or, you got to go beat out, you got excited when you beat Duke out for a kid. And now, like, you're in it for some of these top 250 guys, or, these top 4-star guys. And a lot of it's NIL. A lot of it is, opportunity. A lot of it's, hey, I'm going to get in the SEC, see what happens. And, right place, right time. I think you've got a really good recruiting staff that's really kind of taking advantage of, their scouting abilities and, their abilities to know the program in and out. Like Harding Harper is very pivotal in this. I think from the offensive line perspective, Dylan Altenreith has been a really big part of all of this. Unfortunately, he's going to the Titans, and that's not good for us. He's been really, really pivotal in a lot of these relationships, and he's been taking the load on a lot of the recruiting. So whoever they hire will have to be kind of an ace in the hole, kind of like what Altenreith was. Somebody that knows the offensive line position that also can scout. So. But, offensive line recruiting is taking, it's on the rise, and tackle has been a position of priority, because you can never, it's almost finding the perfect tackle is almost like finding a unicorn. Like the interior guys you could get, there's a bunch of 6'3", 6'4", 300-pounders out there that you could mold into guards and centers and things. Center maybe not as much, but finding a tackle is like finding a unicorn, like finding a guy that's big enough to be able to handle himself in the run game, but quick enough to be able to get that edge guy that lines up 72 yards outside of you and rushes the quarterback. Is good luck. The guy runs a 4.5 and he's lined up inside the band. He's lined up next to the tuba player in the stands, and he's going to rush from there. Like that guy who thinks he needs a speed advantage, but it's having a guy that's quick enough to get out there. I say that facetiously, but it's a guy that can get out there on a wide 9 and understand leverage and smart enough to understand, okay, what's my best angle to cut him off? And hey, are my feet good enough to actually get out there and execute what I want to do? And that's hard to find. And there's a lot of guys who you think can do it, can't. And it's always that one guy who you're like, you watch out for the guy you react with, I don't know about him. Yeah, I don't really know about him. If you say that about a guy, that's the one especially the tackle position. That's the one I always feel like I'm like, yeah, okay, of course it's that guy, right? Of course it's him. And so that always kind of cracks me up a little bit. But I think recruiting is on the rise. I think a lot of things in this program are on the rise, and I'm very happy about that. And this program is going to benefit with NIL. They've bought fully in. So if you're one of those Clark Lee detractors, I think he's finally got some systems in place. He reached out to all the right people to help him get these systems in place. That's what it takes, man. Like there's no, Nick Saban wasn't Nick Saban without the assistants that he hired. He wasn't that. He would have been nothing. Like think about it, if he didn't have the guys that he hired, if he didn't have Kirby, if he didn't have Sark, if he didn't have some of the assistants that you probably never heard of that have gone on to become, really like Fran Brown, I think was at Alabama at one point. Like he's Syracuse's head coach. Like there's a lot of guys you don't realize that were on staff at Alabama. It's insane. But those guys helped Nick Saban build what Alabama is. Like it takes a staff of people. It takes hiring people equal to or greater than you to help you get and if you don't have an ego about it, then it works. People that have egos about it and want to do everything, that's the ones that don't work. Like you could be the greatest coach of all time, but if you have an ego and you don't want people to help you and you want to be the authority figure in the room and it's my way or the highway, that doesn't work. That's never worked. And the guys that you think are like that aren't actually like that. Like Bill Belichick, you think he's actually like that? He is not. Yeah, he has the final word. And if he wants something a certain way, occasionally he's going to put his foot down, and that's what it is. Every head coach will do that too. But if you think that Bill Belichick is not somebody that's going to rely on his assistants, you're wrong, right? There's a reason why people had longevity. He trusted those guys. Matt Patricia, he saw potential in that. He saw potential in Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien, who's crushing it at Boston College. He had, Nick Saban had the utmost confidence in Kirby Smart to take over the defense, and Kirby's reciprocating that. Kirby, with Dan Lanning, Kirby wouldn't have won those national championships without Dan Lanning, and Dan Lanning wouldn't have done that without Glenn Schumann and without, Trey Scott and without, just on down the list. Like it's just that, like it's a team effort. So, anyway, that I rant a little bit, but as far as the portal goes, it's always good to get offensive linemen in the portal. You can never go wrong there, but just kind of wait and see exactly what you need before you really kind of go out. But before we go, Kentucky, let's just say they kicked their tails, and that was not a good game for Mark Byington and crew. We'll talk about it next. All right, wrapping up the show here, Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen. Like and subscribe if you like what you've heard so far. And you want to talk more about offensive line, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me, hey, Corey, I think you're spot on about the offensive line, or Corey, you're full of bleep it a bleep, bleep, bleep about this offensive line. You know, whatever you want to say. Make it constructive though. If you got feedback, if you have criticisms, I love I love the constructive ones. So make sure you make it constructive. Like, hey, if I can do something better, shoot, let me know. I'm not going to take offense to it. But if you just tell me I suck, then I'm not going to listen to that. You know. Okay, cool. Think I suck? Yeah, good for you, right? But if it's something constructive, something I can do to improve your experience listening, just let me know, right? And so. Speaking of making it enjoyable to watch, I think, Kentucky, dismantled Vandy this week. They got their revenge for sure. And that game ended. It wasn't pretty. But I don't think it did a lot to jeopardize Vandy's tournament stuff. I think people were expecting that. Is 82-61 was your final, and 19, I think it was 19 points, something like that. Somebody do the math. It's late. But here's my takeaways from that game. I'm not going to do a full stat comparison. But the identity is clear. The toughness and grit keeps him in games. I think the first half was exciting to watch. I mean, they were just trading haymakers back and forth throughout the first half and a little bit into the second half. But, the identity is clear. It's clear what Vandy wants to try to accomplish, and it's clear that they're going to play and they're going to make you beat them until the second half. Unfortunately, that goes out of the window on the road and the second half, right? They look like a panicked team when they come out at halftime. They came out and they were down by 1 going into half, and it felt like they got out there and felt the pressure and was like, oh crap, we gotta, it felt like they were scrambling, and it felt like they were down 20 already. And Kentucky went on like a couple of 9-0 runs that just put this thing out of reach, and then it was bad, right? So it's just the focus, the lack of focus, the lack of I don't want to say resolve, because they do have some resolve, but it just seemed like Murphy's Law really applied. If it could go wrong, it went wrong, and they just couldn't get the train back on the tracks. And so that's kind of one of those things. It's a mindset thing. But what didn't help was that they were getting just obliterated. They got obliterated in the paint. It's what a bigger team chooses to pick on them in the paint. Vandy's helpless, right? You had Tyler Nickel, who's 6'7", trying to guard a 6'11" center who's an expert in low post moves, and it just wasn't a whole lot you could do. Otega Owe scored 20. There wasn't much you could do to stop him. It was brutal. They allowed 56% in the second half, 45% on 3-pointers. They just weren't guarding the arc. They weren't contesting many of Kentucky's shots. A lot of that was from the paint. And Kentucky was missing 2 of their scorers. So this game should have been right there for the taking. This game should have been a lot closer, but Vandy just could not defensively. They couldn't communicate. They had no answers down low, and it just was very evident. And Andrew Carr, he had 11 points, and it felt like he had 111 points. That's kind of just where that was, because it just seemed like they kept going to him down in the paint, and they just kept getting back down. So, it's one of those games where you're concerned about what direction this program's going into. I don't know if that might not be the right thing to say, as far as because that feels so long term, the direction how this game really steers us in a terrible direction, and it's going to be a program that's going to go down that's not true. It's very indicative of what this team is right now, and I don't think like I said earlier, I don't think it affects their tournament chances. I don't think you can stand to lose many more in that fashion, or you will start to kind of slip backwards, like Georgia's kind of slipped out of the rankings a little bit. They're kind of out of the field now. Vandy's still in, I think, but it's just hanging on. But they've just got to, they got Ole Miss on Saturday. They just got to, I think for this is, and it's very indicative of like what this team, like I said, it's very indicative of what this team is. They're a team that's still very new with each other. It's a team that's very new with Coach Byington. It's a team that has a clear identity, but doesn't always play to it, but like how they play to it, how they get to it, I think there's a little bit of another mental aspect that's missing. There's another mental aspect that just kind of goes away, seems like. And for that, if they can just contain that, if they can almost the more robotic they get as far as like mindset, like, hey, we're just like we're gonna play, we're gonna do us no matter what. I don't care if the score is 101 to 2, or if we're up by 1, if you're up by 20, if you're down by 30, if you're down by 5, it doesn't matter the score. And the elite teams, they play to a standard. The score doesn't matter. They play to a standard, and that's what it is. So Vandy will eventually get there. You can see that they want to be there. You can see that that's where they're clearly going. It's just they're not always there yet. The train will go, and it'll derail. And they put it back on the tracks, it derail again. And then it plows right through Tennessee, plows right through Kentucky at home, and then plows right through Tennessee again at Thompson Bowling, and then bam, hits a wall, derails, and then like it's just kind of limping along now. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if you follow that analogy, but I'll leave it there. I'll leave you time to think about that. But anyway, that's all I got. Offensive line play is going to be crucial. It's going to be crucial to get that right. But basketball, they'll figure it out. They have to, right? But that's going to do it for us on this edition of Locked On Vandy. We'll see you back here next time. Get you ready for the weekend. Get you primed for the weekend. And that's all she wrote. Peace. Anchor down.